Hi boys and girls, this is Mrs. Twisdale. Today I'm going to teach you lesson 3.5. We're going to talk about absolute value. Your objective today is I can find and interpret the absolute value and meaning of rational numbers. Let's go ahead and tell you what absolute value means. So absolute value, your definition that you're going to write down in your notes is absolute value is the magnitude of a number. It's the number's distance from 0 on a number line. So, for example, the absolute value of -3 is 3 because -3 is 3 spaces away from 0 on the number line. So, it's different than opposites, though, because opposites is, it's kind of similar, but, for example, the opposite of 3 is -3. But the absolute value of +3 is just 3. Because you're really looking for how many units is it from 0. What's the distance? Okay? Absolute value of -3 is written symbolically as -3 like this. This is absolute value. Kind of looks like it's in a little jail. Okay? So when you're writing something in absolute value, let's say it was -17, you would do absolute value with like these little bars around it. Okay? Or the absolute value of -17 is 17. The absolute value of 5 is just 5 because it's how far away from 0 it is. It's distance from 0 or the magnitude, the size of that number. Regardless if it's positive or negative, it's how far it is from 0. So here's an example of when we would use absolute value. So here's a little story problem about a cargo ship. It was called the Mohican, and it sank by Florida. Okay, so this boat sank into the ocean, and you can see here's a picture of it. And divers today visit the ship, and an elevation, the ship sits at 32 feet, -32 feet. So it's 32 feet below sea level. So you want to use a number line to find the absolute value of -32. So distance cannot be negative. You can't have a negative distance. So when it talks about absolute value, we would say that its depth, which would be right about here, -32. So the distance is 32 units because you can't really have -32 feet. So it would just be 32 feet, but it's below sea level. So the absolute value of -32 is 32 because distance can never be negative. So we talk about it like it's negative, but it can't be. So its absolute value, it's 32 units or 32 feet below sea level. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once here. Distance can't be negative, so we use absolute value. Okay? Let's give you another example. So here's an example to do with weight. You can't have negative weight. If you have, you might lose weight, but you're not negative weighting. You're just losing weight. So here's an example of a dog food being tested. So a food scientist tested a new dog food on 5 dogs. Each dog's weight was monitored during the course of the test, meaning they watched what their weight was and recorded it. The results are shown in the table. Positive values indicate weight gains in pounds. So if the dog gained weight, it would be a positive value, like right here. Negative values indicate weight loss in pounds. So think about if a food scientist wants to know if this food is healthy, they need to see if a dog is losing weight while they're eating it or if they're gaining weight. And they would prefer, of course, that the dog would gain weight most likely, unless it's a diet food. So here's the instructions. We're going to graph the weight changes on the number line, then find their absolute values. So we don't really need the names of the dogs, but it's kind of cool to know. We're going to look at these weight changes and put them on the number line. So Buck is 3/4 positive, so he's right here. Oops, let's see if I can, it's not going to let me write very well today. So there's Buck. Goldie lost -5/8 of a pound, which is just over -1/2 a pound. So Goldie lost 1/2 a pound. Mackerel lost 1.5 pounds, pretty much. Almost 1.5 pounds. pounds. Put that right here. Paloma gained 2 pounds, a little bit more than 2 pounds. Right there. And then Spike lost about half a pound, 3/8, so just a little less than half a pound. There's Spike there. Okay. Now, remember, we want to talk about absolute value because you can't really have a negative weight, so we want to think of it more as just distance from 0. So the distance from 0 to the points on the graph, the first point on the graph, 3/4. Let's see, they did that one for you. So the absolute value of 3/4 is 3/4. The absolute value of negative 5/8 is 5/8. The absolute value of negative 1/7/16 is 1/7/16. Absolute value of 2 1/8 is 2 1/8. And the absolute value is 3/8. So it means that's how far it is from our starting point of 0 right here. Okay? Regardless of what side of the number line it is, that's what our absolute value is going to be. We're looking how far does it take us to get back to 0. And that's how we got those numbers. Absolute value can't be negative because distance is never negative, and it's the distance to 0. So it will never be negative. So just remember that. Okay, let's go ahead and do the next example. So I want you to think of all the integers with an absolute value of 7. Okay, think about it. How many numbers are exactly 7 units away from 0? Well, there's only 2 directions we can go. So let's start with positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, there's one integer. So 7 is an option. Well, let's just double check to make sure the other direction also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look at that. So 7 and negative 7 are both integers with an absolute value of 7. Come on. Absolute value equals 7. So both of those have the same absolute value. Okay, let's go ahead and here's your example. I'm going to do an example and then you're going to do the try-its. So this number line does not even... this number line is way too small for this example. So the absolute value of negative 11 is 11. Go ahead and try these two on your own. Okay, to check your work, the absolute value of 9 is 9, and the absolute value of negative 15 is positive 15. Okay, here's another one. Find all numbers with the given absolute value shown. I'll do the example problem. So if the two numbers that have the absolute value of 13 is 13 and negative 13. That's like the 7 problem I just did. Go ahead and try 13 and 14. Okay, so the absolute value of 5, 6, or the two numbers, would be 5, 6 and negative 5, 6. And then for 14, 14.03 and negative 14.03. Because both of them have the same absolute value. All right, so now we're going to find the missing number or numbers, because some of them have the same, to make the statement true. So what absolute value would work here? So this is your example. So what number has an absolute value of 10? Well, 10 does, and then also negative 10. Because if we put this number in here, the absolute value of 10 is 10. Or if we put the absolute value of negative 10, oops, that should be inside there. Let's try that a little smaller. Negative 10 is also 10. Go ahead and try these two try-its on your own. Okay, so you're probably like, oh, Mrs. Twisdale, this is easy. It could be 1.78 or negative 1.78. Number 19 is a little bit harder. The absolute value of 0 is 0. That's the only option is 0, because you can't have a negative 0. That doesn't work. No such thing as negative 0. So we'll get rid of that. So just 0 on number 19. Okay, here's your level 3 try it problem. Which two numbers are 7.5 units away from 0 on a number line? Go ahead and try this on your own. All right, so I drew a little number line here for you. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. So 7.5 is 1. And if we go the other way, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7.5. And those are our two answers. Okay, last problem. You need to write two different real-world examples. So you're going to share two examples on the Chromebook. One should involve the absolute value of a positive number, and the other should involve the absolute value of a negative number. For example, we have seen an example with the weight for dogs. We've also seen an example with depth below sea level with the boat problem. Okay, so either of those would work, but I also want you to give your own. So I'm not going to give you an answer here because there's lots of options, but I hope that that gives you a good understanding of absolute value. Just a couple things to remember. Absolute value cannot, I just spelled that wrong. Cannot be negative. It's never negative because it is a distance. It's the distance away from 0. All right, boys and girls. That was a nice quick lesson. I hope you guys have an awesome day of learning.